Good evening. For the first time, ministers have acknowledged that Britain could still be making payments to the European Union after leaving in order to secure favourable access to European markets. The Brexit Secretary, David Davis, said that this was an option if it meant getting the best deal. But some Conservative MPs said that people who voted leave would be outraged at that idea. Our political editor, Laura Kuensberg, reports now, and there is some flash photography coming up.
Every week, we send £350 million to Brussels.
What did the country vote for? More power for our government, but for many, the promise of cash that's spent by the EU being spent by us. But for the first time, a senior minister has confirmed, even after we've left the Union, we might still pay in.
Will the government consider making any contribution in any shape or form for access to the single market?
The major criterion here is that we get the best possible access for goods and services to the European market. And if that is included in what he's talking about, then of course we would consider it.
Remember, ministers aren't meant to be giving anything away. But he's not the only one staring into the vacuum. He was backed by the Chancellor this afternoon. Our membership right now costs $11 billion a year. But after Brexit, we might pay for the single market to trade freely around the continent, or to remain part of research and science projects, for example. And there'll be exit costs too, like the pensions of EU staff. Brexit! But that wasn't quite what many voters bargained for, and some MPs who campaigned to leave would fight it tooth and claw.
People would be absolutely outraged if we came out of the EU and then carried on paying them 15 billion a year, 10 billion a year, or whatever the figure is. No, I don't think that's going to happen.
But should we keep paying something to the EU if it means we'd prosper? Labour isn't yet sure.
We were promised no running commentary, so we've got that. That's the first broken promise. The idea of paying for access, I'm not really sure what that means.
And tonight, another hint from Mr Davis, speaking at a business event in Wales. Labour shortages won't be in anyone's interests, he said. A clue that low-skilled European migrants may still be allowed to come here after Brexit if business needs them.
Theresa May's tight-lipped negotiating logic has been simple. In a game of high-stakes poker, it doesn't make sense to show your hand. But little by little, deliberately or not, ministers are starting to display a few of the cards.
The government never gave up on photo opportunities, but had intended to keep quiet on its plans for Brexit. But piece by piece we're learning it's their positions, not the referendum promises, that will hold sway. Laura Kuensberg, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's get some thoughts from Brussels then. Let's talk to our Europe correspondent, Damien Grammaticas. And Damien, the question is, what is the view there about buying access without any strings attached?
Well, Hugh, if we think that the UK is one of the biggest contributors to the EU budget, and when those contributions stop, you might imagine the UK would think that would give it some leverage, offering to continue. There are countries that pay into the EU budget, diverse countries like Israel, pay for access to things like student exchange programs, science, common science research. But more important, of course, is the access to the single market. And there, the closest you might think is Norway. It pays into the EU budget, it participates in the single market, but crucially, it also then has to accept EU rules in many areas, and importantly there, the freedom of movement of people. Now, if we listen to what EU leaders have said since the referendum, they've been very clear. They have said the UK cannot pick and choose, they will not change the rules. They haven't indicated at all that money would make them change their minds. Hugh.
Damien, thanks very much again. Damien Grammaticas there in Brussels. Well, one of the main debating points, of course, in the referendum campaign was immigration. And the latest official figures suggest that immigration to the UK has risen to its highest ever level. According to estimates from the Office for National Statistics, there were 650,000 immigrants in the 12 months to the end of June. Net migration, that is the difference between that number and those who leave, well, that remains at well over 300,000, and that is well above the government's target of below 100,000. Our home editor Mark Easton has this report.
It's Romania's National Day, and in what's called Little Romania, Burnt Oak in northwest London, the bakery is preparing for a celebration. But with record numbers of Romanians arriving in the UK, there's still concern about what's going to happen to the 3.5 million EU nationals already living in Britain. Immediately after the referendum, Mihaela told her family they needed to become British.
I say, let's try to apply for residency, then next year we apply for passport.
So citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
You want to become British?
Yeah, I hope so. I feel a bit disappointed because of the Brexit, but what can I do, no?
Will you stay or go?
I'm going to stay. Yeah, I'm going to stay.
With the Labour Party saying EU residents are being used as bargaining chips, bakery owner Ovidia says many Romanians are nervous about their future.
People are scared, you know, they are simple people which they are scared, and obvious they jump to apply immediately, you know what I mean, even if it's going to be a process to apply. It's not so easy to apply overnight.
Figures released today show that in the 3 months after the Brexit vote, the Home Office received 1,000 applications every day from EU citizens wanting to become British residents, almost 3 times the normal level, and expected to rise further. Meanwhile, the number of EU workers applying for national insurance numbers is down 4% overall, 17% down for Poles and Lithuanians, suggesting the referendum may be beginning to slow numbers arriving. Now, before the vote, it was business as usual, with net migration still at well over 3 times the government target, a commitment ministers say Brexit will help deliver.
Well, Brexit gives us the opportunity to control numbers coming in from the rest of Europe in the same way that we can control numbers coming in from outside Europe. So I think there's an opportunity during the negotiations to ensure we can deliver on that, which I think was central to the referendum campaign and a clear message from the British people.
The Prime Minister has restated her personal determination to get net migration below 100,000. When Home Secretary, it's emerged she wanted the children of illegal immigrants to be denied school places. But today's figures show non-EU immigration is still higher than that from Europe, a reminder that controlling borders doesn't necessarily mean closing the door. Mark Easton, BBC News, Burnt Oak.
The poor performance of some schools in the north